Hey guys, unfortunately my computer's dying, so you might have to see me touch it a couple times to keep it awake. Hopefully that doesn't distract you too much. So, my name's Dane, and I'm here to talk about tattoos in the professional work environment. In today's social environment, appearance plays a large role in how people will view you, treat you, and talk to you especially. And although tattoos are becoming more acceptable in the workplace, many people still frown upon them. I once had an older lady ask me if I planned on becoming a biker simply because I had a visible tattoo on my arm. Now, keep in mind that I worked as a barista at Dutch Bros, so maybe she mistook our Dutch mafia for an actual crime syndicate, but I don't think that was the case. Now, I wasn't offended, nor do I think of myself as a very intimidating person, but simply because I had a tattoo, she thought I was some sort of delinquent, and with actual disgust in her voice, she immediately thought less of me. Now, given that I currently work in healthcare, I myself have had numerous negative experiences when in the workplace simply because I have tattoos. The fact of the matter is that if someone chooses to get a tattoo, it should be absolutely no one's business. The art in someone's body does not always tell their story, and nor does it show their ability to work in a professional environment. Now, unfortunately, everyone has experienced discrimination or hate in the workplace to some degree in one way or another, and if you haven't experienced this, it's highly likely that you will one day. Whether it be the way you wear your hair, whether you have piercings, or even, heaven forbid, your religion, your gender, or even the color of your skin. To some degree, you will unfortunately have to deal with this, mainly because people are extremely judgmental based off of appearance. And while tattoos are becoming more and more common, it's likely that you will be thought of differently simply because you have one. My point here today is that no one should be judged for what they decide to do with their bodies, especially regarding tattoos in a professional work environment. Now, I think there is so much controversy behind tattoos in the workplace today is because the main issue in today's society is that most people judge someone solely based off their appearance. And while I am also guilty of this sometimes, you shouldn't judge a book by its cover, regardless. Saying that someone is incompetent because they have a tattoo is dangerously similar to saying that someone is incompetent because they failed a class. Now, doctors and teachers nowadays are also getting tattoos, and you would never know. Unless they end up leaving the workplace and maybe they take off their coat or something, you would never see it. Now, while tattoos are becoming more and more common and more socially accepted, there unfortunately is still a large stigma behind tattoos. And because of this stigma, people with tattoos are initially perceived as more scary looking, mean, untrustworthy, and so on. In fact, several studies were done to show that people with tattoos are more likely to be perceived as intimidating, aggressive, frightening, and even rebellious. Now, this stigma originally started due to tattoos being considered a taboo, and the generational stigma of unprofessionalism started with older generations. The stigma against tattoos started in the early 30s and 40s, and it was partly another way to condemn Native Americans and other foreign body marking rituals as a way to prevent indigenous people with any sort of body markings from getting jobs or being socially accepted. They wanted us to think that tattoos are bad and wanted us to associate them with savagery, crime, and maliciousness. The generational taboo and stigma towards tattoos has affected our society's view of tattoos, and it has done so for several generations. And because of this, society has made us develop preconceived notions about what professions are acceptable to have tattoos. Stemming from a generational taboo, we subconsciously associate tattoos with unprofessionalism, and as well as unprestigious professions. If a person has tattoos, you are more likely to think that they are a bartender, a sex worker, or even a criminal or an ex-convict, rather than a nurse or a teacher. People are way more often more likely to associate negative attributes with tattoos such as irresponsibility, impulsivity, dishonesty, and so much worse. People are more likely to think that you are a convict or a gang member, or that you're dangerous simply because you have tattoos. Now, when I started my sleeve, I was afraid of the same thing. I was afraid that people would look at me differently, and I was afraid that I wouldn't get to become a nurse simply because I had visible tattoos. So when I actually got my first tattoo, I had it start right here, just above my wrist. And as you can see, I've clearly gone down farther because of how I feel about tattoos and how passionate I am about them. And even though the times are changing and tattoos are becoming way more socially acceptable, the stigma behind tattoos is pretty baseless. And I believe it's another form of oppression towards expression. As someone who is considered heavily tattooed, I fully believe tattoos should be considered a form of personal expression or even free speech. People use tattoos to express themselves the same way other people use music, hobbies, or even the way they style their hair. They use all of those ways to express themselves. It's all different, but essentially it is all the same. Tattoos can represent a numerous amount of things as well, and just to name a few, they can mean something of importance, people you've loved or lost, something you're passionate about, a life-changing experience, or even just a funny moment that has no meaning at all. Either way, whether that tattoo has meaning or doesn't, it's important to you. And it obviously, if you got it on your body, hopefully it does mean something. Now, while you can use tattoos to express yourself freely, there is a certain level of professionalism with tattoos in the workplace, meaning that even though you can get whatever you want tattooed on your body, it doesn't necessarily mean you should. Just like with clothes and word choice in the workplace, there is a line between appropriate and inappropriate, meaning that any tattoo should be allowed regardless of placement on the body, so as long as they're not obviously vulgar or offensive. And this brings me to my conclusion. So as long as you don't get an obviously offensive tattoo, or or even the amount of tattoos you have, they should not be considered a factor into which profession you can choose or a factor in your chances of getting a job or in your dream career. I want you to remember that my main point here today is that no one should be judged for what they decide to do with their bodies, especially regarding tattoos in the professional work environment, because having tattoos doesn't predict one's ability to work in a professional environment. Many people with tattoos are often discriminated against, unfortunately, and although they may not discriminated against to the same degree as some minorities, for the way they look, unfortunately, they are denied job opportunities because of this. And because employers associate tattoos with inexperienced and unmotivated workers, it makes it harder to get an actual career. And I'm trying to become a nurse right now, and it's making it kind of difficult for me in the workplace. And that's not the way it should be. Tattoos are becoming more and more common, like I said before, but they're no longer for old bikers and young rebels. Anyone can get them nowadays, and that includes doctors and teachers as well. And like I said, even doctors and teachers are getting tattooed nowadays. Therefore, society needs to change the way they think about tattoos and how they view the people that have them. If there's anything I want you to take away from this message, it's don't simply judge a book by its cover, and tattoos do not affect one's ability to work in the professional environment. One should not be judged for the way for the color of their skin, and that goes for the same for what that is on their skin as well. Thank you.